Corporate finance practice problem using Excel. Net present value NPV with delayed payments. Get ready, it's time to take your chance with corporate finance. Here we are in our Excel worksheet. If you have access to the Excel worksheet and would like to follow along, note that we are in the practice tab as opposed to the example tab. The example tab in essence being an answer key. Information left-hand side. Blue areas where we're going to populate that information working through the problem. Net present value calculation, the NPV calculation, similar to prior problems with the difference that the payments are going to be delayed. We're not expecting to get a return until a longer period out at the end of the 5th year in this case. So other than that, we have a similar kind of scenario. We're going to say the investments start at an investment, money going down, and then we expect to receive returns on it in the future. This might be buying equipment, investing into a project of some kind. This might be a longer term project because of course we have that initial investment going down that we don't expect to receive returns on for some time. That initial investment we're going to say is the $200,000 cash outflow. Cost of capital 9%, meaning we could put our money elsewhere and get an opportunity cost on it, or get a cost or get a return elsewhere of the 9%. So that's not really just inflation. That's the return that we want to have, our required rate of return, in order to accept basically a project. And so if our net present value is positive using that rate, cost of capital, the required rate of return, the hurdle rate you might hear it be called, then we might take on that project because we will have received, if this number becomes positive, that 9%. If it's really positive, then we would have cleared it by a greater degree. And if we want to know what that rate of return was, then we can calculate the internal rate of return. So the cash flows for years 1, 2, 3, and 4, no inflows. But then in year 5, we're expecting $40,000, and then it goes up to $50,000, and so on up till 10 years out at that point. So that's going to be the process. So we got our normal kind of present value type of calculations. I'm going to go ahead and calculate this on down from year 1 all the way down to the year 10 like we normally do, even though you could cut out the first few calculations due to the fact that they're 0, and therefore the result will be 0. So let's take a look at this. We'll use the same kind of format here. I'm going to say year 0, year 1. I'm going to copy that down. Same thing we've seen in the past. On down to 10 periods, and then I'll have the total down below. Let's go to the alignment and center these, and then we'll have the total, which will be down here. Total. And then the outflows, what we're going to start with, I'm going to make the outflows negative. The outflow is going to start off in period 0 at the $200,000. So $200,000 going out. Now these years 1 through 4 are negative, so you could remove them from this calculation. But I'll just keep them in here so we get a visual idea of what is happening throughout the full process. It's your choice from presentation purposes whether you want to remove them or not. From a calculation purpose, if you're using Excel, fairly straightforward to do the same kind of process using the autofill function. So I'm just going to copy this series of payment just like they show over here, including the zeros. You could copy and paste them. I think the autofill method is better if you can reference to something in your worksheet so that you can then change your data and run different scenarios very quickly in that format. So I'll autofill this on down. Autofill, autofill. There's the 75,000 at the year 10. Let's underline this font group, underline. Let's sum it up. Autofilled it down. Let's sum it up. Summing up. So there we have it. So there we have the 160,000 positive if we don't take into consideration the time value of money. But considering the payments don't happen till some point in the future, time value of money is going to be significant because we're not getting a return till some significant point out into the future. So I'm going to calculate the time value of money for these cells here and just do the same calculation all the way down, noting that obviously you don't really need to do it for the time period 0 or the items that have 0 in it because the results will be the same. But it's nice to have your whole column be uniform with the same calculation in it. So I'm going to do that here. We're going to say negative present value, shift 9, rate is going to be the 9%. If I was to copy this down, I need to make that absolute reference or a mixed reference. We will do that shortly, not now though. Comma, period is 0, comma, because it's not an annuity, but present value of 1, 200,000, same result because we're at period 0. We could do the same thing here. We're going to get the same thing, a very uninteresting result, but I want to have this whole column uniform. So I'm going to say present value, the rate 9%, comma, number of periods 1, comma, and then comma, the payment is that. And then you could do that on down here. And then, of course, in period 5, that's when it becomes interesting. So let's do a couple down here where it's interesting before we autofill. Negative present value, shift 9. The rate is going to be the 9%, comma, number of periods 5. Note that I'm picking the periods up in this column to the left. Very useful to do that. You can hard code 5 into your worksheet, but it's nice to be able to autofill it down, because if I hard code it into the worksheet, just type it in there, in other words, I can't use the autofill function, whereas this cell will move down relative and be useful in that way. So I'm going to say comma, comma, future value 40,000. We're going to bring that all the way back 5 years, so it's only worth the 25,997. That's a significant discount given the 9% and the fact that it's 5 years into the future. So let's do it one more time, and then we'll do our autofill. Present value, shift 9, rate 9%, comma, number of periods is going to be 6 now, comma, comma, because it's not an annuity, but present value of 1 of the 50,000, bringing it back now at the 29,813. So there we have it. That's going to be the idea. Now what I'm going to do is delete these items and then use the autofill to do this nice and quickly. So I'm going to delete this, and then we're going to go ahead and take this one. I need to autofill it down, but the one that's outside the table, that 9%, we need to make that absolute. So I'm going to double click on it. That 9%'s in B5. Put my cursor in B5. Select F4 on the keyboard. That's a $sign before the B and the 5, making it absolute. You only need a mixed reference, but absolute works well. Then we can simply put our cursor on the fill handle, autofill it all the way down. And so there we have it. We've autofilled it all the way down. Now, once again, these are all unimpressive results here. We don't need the formula here, but it's nice to have this whole column have a uniform formula in it so that you know exactly what's going on, and then you can reformat this kind of in whatever way you want to see it. And then down here, you might want to double click down here somewhere just to see that it is indeed picking up the calculation as you expect it to. We're picking up that %. So then we can sum it up over here. Let's do an underline, font, and underline, and then go ahead and sum this up equals the SUM, and sum this up. And then if it's positive, good, negative, no. Note we come up to a negative number even though we had a positive 160,000, because after discounting it, especially since the cash flows don't happen until a good deal into the future, we're not covering the 9%, which includes our required rate of return. So we're getting a return less than the 9%. That return is our required cost of capital, or our hurdle rate, our cost of capital rate. So therefore, we wouldn't accept the project if it's below that amount. So note, you could format this again in some other ways. You might say, if I had this whole table, you might say, why don't I just format this table looking something more like this? We'll have the series of payments equal to, I'll say, negative of this 200,000. But then, and then I'm going to have our series of payments here equal to the 0 all the way down, the 0 all the way down, like so. But then this part right here isn't necessary. So you might just delete this. Like, I don't need to present this at all. I'm just going to I'm going to jump from 0 to 5. I'll just delete this whole thing, delete, and shift the cells up. And you can present the data that way. And that would probably be the way you'd want to show it to other people, right? You'd say, here's period 0, nothing's happening from period 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we're going to get a return 5 years out, which would discount all the way back to the 25,997 due to it being 5 years out and the fact that we have a 9% required rate of return. So you could present it in other ways. Just note that this column is useful to have over here so that you could simply copy and paste your results. The column over here doesn't have to be ordered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? It could jump from 0 to 5. That's fine. But that 5 is used in this calculation. That allows you to use the autofill to copy and paste the formula down much more easily.